This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks us about competence and constitution, and Aaron asks us about control.
Woo! I dream I never know anyone at the party, and I'm always Joey.
Wow, that's what a Joey sounds like. This is what a sick Aaron sounds like. I'm sorry for every sound.
And this is what an executive producer and Adam Duritz, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Round here. I don't got any of it. I'm sorry. Jess is up. Here.
This cold is a range reduction? Is that what we're learning?
That's what we're learning. I am the opposite of Ariana Grande for the current moment in time.
I mean, you always have the range, and so...
True.
Pequeño.
True. So... Ariana Pequeño. I like that. Ariana Tall. No, that's just the Starbucks version. So is the house fairly... tidy, rate, review, subscribe? Is that no? I don't. Yeah.
I'll just say I sent y'all link last week directly after recording our prognogs, the nog-nogs of influencers being canceled like right away, just like coming in.
Wow, is that
we don't need them?
Confirmation bias?
Or just rightness
or brilliance
at speed. Yes, brilliance.
Right. Or is it prescient brilliance?
Just in time rightness.
Just in time rightness. Ooh, we all like that. Our brains do have an orientation toward being right, as we learned recently. So yeah, cool. House clean.
All right, we're gonna do an episode of So Here We Are Talking. Yeah. We're not calling it that. That's not a thing. But we have like a little bit of early year existential types of questions today that we're just gonna ponder together. Not a preponderance of ponderances, only two. There are two ponderances. So I will kick off, and this is a very open question for all of you. Please choose to be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with in this moment. So I watch a lot of science videos, we know, like a lot of cosmology and astrophysics. I just like thinking in that space. I like hearing smart people talk about cool new discoveries and things of that nature. And along with that often comes a lot of advanced mathematics, and you learn about new sort of ideas that I'll go explore gently. I'll cursorily explore the ideas and like understand the concepts, but I can't do any of the maths that these people do. I can't sort of build the models or do the engineering tasks that they do to conduct their experiments. And I often think about sort of, or at least certainly recently, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of the distinction between competence and constitution, right? We've mentioned before, I was sort of potentially going down like a hard sciences path with neuroscience, and I learned that like I was constitutionally not disposed to the lab. And in thinking about some of these other things, right, of should I take a like online advanced math class? Would that be like a fun thing to do? Like, could I do that just for personal edification? Not that I want to like go into deep maths. I keep confronting this idea of like coding is interesting. I've done a little bit, but I don't think I could like sit and learn to do all the coding. And so I'm curious how you all think about these ideas, and what are the things that maybe you are competent and interested in, but constitutionally not disposed to engage with?
I don't know if you hear a very quiet baby crying, but this is the vulnerable me wrapped in swaddling clothes in the room who's willing to open up a little bit more. I mean, I find that I have the same relationship with really compelling skills. And I would I guess by what I mean by compelling skills is just stuff that I am, when I'm faced with it, I'm awed by. Like I'm fundamentally like dumbfounded by, and I have a little bit of a gap between like, yeah, sure, someone could train themselves to be able to do this, and actually like you are just touched with a set of neurons that I don't have. I am constitutionally not disposed to be able to do that thing, and jazz piano is that thing. I love piano so deeply. I love playing, but I learned by sight reading. And I almost went to music school, and I took like AP music theory when I was in high school. And that was my first step to get closer to like music, not as performance, but music as language and music as structure. And I loved it. I found it so fascinating. But that was the first sign to me that actual structured music learning is not something that I'm great with. I'm much better at exploring, tinkering, and finding serendipity in music. And that's what I love. But that's why jazz piano to me is just like, I know a blues scale is going to be the basic. I know that just learning a very simple way to navigate the circle of fifths in a way that like is somewhat surprising will get there. And I know that like listening to jazz greats would also inspire me to like live in perpetual not syncopation but exploration, and like exploring different modes and just breaking them over and over again and finding freedom in that. But I feel like I would just need to quit doing anything and do it all day long for the rest of my life to create anything that I would ever be proud of. I'm in awe of it. Wow. So I anytime I see a jazz pianist in particular, I feel the way about other instruments as well, but pianists, I'm just like, oh my God, what you can do and what you elicit. And to elicit that when you're in your own zone, it's magic. It's the closest thing to magic that I can actually think of in life. So that's one thing for me.
I have a question, because when I don't know if I see these two things of competency and constitution as the ones at odds with each other. Like you telling this story, Aaron, about the potential for you to be a jazz pianist. In my mind, I go straight to like the trifecta of making something happen, which is that you want to do it. Like there's enough interest to do the thing that you can do it, whether it's like your competence, you're naturally gifted, you have the skills or the potential to make it happen, and you have the opportunities that afford you the chance. And then there's the you do it, like the ideas are cheap and like sure you can talk about it all day long, but like if you don't just have the willingness and the motivation to just do the thing, then it still doesn't happen. And I'm curious to understand, what about this, like, the interest versus ability part of all of this was interesting to you, Joey?
I think in this like physics, math realm that I'm like, I enjoy thinking about these things, and I'm as I encounter these new interesting ideas, like I can conceptually understand them. I understand how they're applying them. I just have never taken the time to do them. That's not to say like I believe I would be some sort of like magical special physicist. I also know that these are sort of extremely brilliant people that have, made significant accomplishments, but I'm more thinking just like the idea of being able to go deeper. And so like when I'm encountering these ideas, or in any math class that I took when I was growing up in high school or college, like I was never being sort of stumped by the ideas. And so I'm like, oh, like it might be cool to be able to like learn further and see the world in a new way. And I think I would be able to at least understand the concepts that are going on. But the constitutional bit to me is like what it requires to become a coder or to like learn advanced math is that sort of like repetition, like going through and sort of like doing proofs and completing right? Like I don't even have like the language, right? So I'm starting in like a weird distant place where I play in like, I'm happy to play in the idea space of these things, but the technical space is where I'm like sitting down for, like I never did math homework when I was in high school or college because I was like the sitting down part and doing like repetitive tasks. I'm just like, it feels physically painful to me. And so that is where like the break is, where I'm like, I want to know more, but like I don't, and maybe it becomes just like in your sort of trifecta, like what I'm calling constitution is just could be reduced to motivation or like neurochemistry or like however granular you want to go in that, where I'm like interested, I want it, but I don't know that I would be able to like maintain through it. And so then it becomes this like distant thing.
It sounds like want to do it, but cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could do it, maybe you would do it. Maybe you do it. But and it's interesting, I guess, that the Constitution is the first type of can do it barrier for you, because it's like, I'm not built to continue this train of thought because it
repetitive
requires
tasks,
focus or like to do certain types of things. It's less about being naturally gifted and it's more about like being built in a way that is intuitive or easier, whereas for someone else they might be built such that it is much easier and it is not as hard for them to do it.
And it presupposes, which is where I get a little bit hung up on it, is like your constitution as a static thing. Like either you are or are not constituted to do something, which like I know a lot of people would probably bristle at that. A lot of Americans would bristle at that thought that like, oh, I can just contort myself to do anything,
Exactly. And that's why in my mind, like, that's why the can do it bubble feels way like maybe constitution is a part of it, but it feels much bigger. And again, maybe like competence is another thing that is you're like naturally born with. Can you just pick it up easy versus I think what you're getting after, Aaron, which I also think is a key to being able to do something, is like, are you gonna like be able to achieve it if you just have the time and effort and do your 10,000 reps or whatever it is to get to there? Because maybe, and I guess this also brings up an existential question of like, and I'm also showing my cards, like I think that there are just some things that are beyond my competitive advantage, to use like a jargon term. Like what would take me so much effort, someone else could do much easier. So maybe I should just let that person do that. And not because I can't, in quotation marks, but because that doesn't make sense to do. Or like Joey, like imagining like strapping Joey to a chair to like it would be so painful to do it. Like, not that you can't, but that why would you? And maybe that's pessimistic or cynical of me, but I think that is my point of view is like at some point it's just okay if maybe you do something else.
I love it. I mean, that you boiled down for me. I kept on like trying to think of like, is it about the degree of application? Like, oh, I want to, like, there's a scale of where this thing that I may or may not be constituted to be able to do can be applied in my life. That reinforces that sense of both motivation, purpose, and necessity of like, great. Cooking is actually an interesting one. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people who 4 years ago might fancy themselves not interested in cooking at all. And then as we've lived through the past 3 years, they have actually picked up a joy of cooking or find other ways that it like serves them in a different way. And it's just like, yeah, not only the skill was not necessary, it didn't have any reason for you to have to do it. But now you can like draw a direct line to you learning this skill, and what you get out of it is like delicious, happy, fun time after like solving a puzzle, which is basically all the cooking is. And then there's another question too of like the efficacy of your output. And I guess this goes more square on to like, if it's something that someone else can do better, it's not worth my time to do it, especially if I'm getting marginal value out of it or it's not going to impact me. And that's the like, to play off the metaphor again, it's like ordering in a pizza or making pizza from home. Like,
well, that's the overachiever's dilemma. I mean, that's what like you're talking about, right? Sort of like embedding achievement into that equation, right?
Yes.
Which could come into the want to do it section. Like, even if it takes way more work, and you could, but like, why would you? But you really want to, joy can supersede and you persist anyway.
Yeah. Joy it can and is its own state of achievement in that you decide what it is that you want to achieve. Is it a functional task, functional output, or is it something different? Is it more conceptual, emotional? And maybe that's also where I find that tension between the idea of constitution and capability is just like, there are a lot of things that I just want to swim in, and the joy comes from swimming in it. And like, I could swim in it for 5 minutes and I'm just as joyful as I would probably be if I were backstroking in it for another 10 years. So like, let me do 5 minutes and then move to something else.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it is telling, right, that like my intelligence is like a thing that I value about myself or whatever, you know, like, and I don't want to achieve. I'm actually like more awed by the people who are good in these fields that I've been talking about because they're like capable of doing those things that it's required of them to get good at those things. And I kind of just want to be able to like swim in it deeper, but I don't have like an ambition to go do things. Even if you're sort of like, what would I look like if I was an astrophysicist, or what would I look like if I was a mathematician? Like, what would my life look like? You know, could I do those things? Like you always, or maybe not everyone, like I often go through just that like thought exercise of like, what would be different? What would I be thinking about? Like, could I do it? Would I be good at it? But you know, even in like, same with like software engineering or whatever, you sort of see these other places that people are existing and you're like, could I live there? Like, what's it like living over there with those things? And it feels like, to me, the sort of intellect to like at least exist maybe is like a thing theoretically I possess, not as like a pat on the back, but I'm like, oh, okay, like I can understand the concepts, but like I couldn't do their job. Like they have a thing I feel like I don't have that makes them special and unique. And I'm sort of like, every time I go into like, what would it be like to live there? Or like, oh, I'll teach myself coding. I'm like, no, you won't. Like you could never.
And it is weird. So I was in a cab on the way back from the airport a couple days ago, and halfway through the ride, the driver just stops. Well, she's been talking the entire time, which is my worst nightmare. And she just stops in the middle of a conversation and just asks, "Are you a doctor?" And I was like, this, what? Like, huh? Partially because it's like, what do you do for a living is probably an easier way to get at the answer to that question rather than just
taking shots in the dark.
Yeah. And like, there was nothing in my, in the context of my very, very non-committal that I'd been giving for about 10 minutes that would suggest that I'm a physician in any way, shape, or form. But it was a thing that, of course, has been spinning in my head for 3 days where I have often thought about, like, what if I had done that? Because spoiler alert, that's what my dad wanted me to do. He was very, very much just wanting to have a child do something that he did. And both of us were like, nah, no. And in that case, though, I do feel like I could be a doctor. The question is, also, could I be the best doctor? And also, what doctor? Like, I'm not going to be a great pediatrician. Would I be a really good surgeon? Oh, would I start to develop a tremor when I'm in my 40s and then have to stop all working altogether? Like, yeah, it goes. I also like
goes straight in there.
It doesn't loosen up. It really is a cordyceps situation. But yeah, I think that like I can't help but take it out of the binariness and take it to the degrees of that. But I hope that we all find a little bit of balance between our own capabilities and our own constitutions. Because you know what? We are infinite. When I get the wrap-up signal, y'all, that's what I do. I turn into a Libra out loud, and that's what happens.
I mean, I guess that is the wrap. Jess, are you upset that Aaron went on your corner because he said he had the competency and the constitution to wrap it up?
No, that's okay. I just have 3 questions for you.
Ooh.
How much do you want it? Do you have what it takes? Are you gonna make it happen?
Tony Robbins is the best. Yeah, I love Jessica Tony Robbins. Yeah. Well put. Well put. Okay, guys. I got something for you, and it's a question that's really, really small, and I'm sure is going to be something that we wrap up really fast. The short bit of context I'll give is that I've been spending a lot of time on a construction project at my house. And those people who know me know that I'm very, very aware of timing, timelines, interdependencies, and efficiency, and how to get things done. And so, when I have
everyone has 3 things.
And everybody has 3 things, and the third one you'll forget. That's the thing. That's the thing. But it has been a reminder of a bigger macro issue in this project getting going, that I have literally no control over this project. There is rain. There are permits from the city that need to come in. There's material that needs to be shipped from other places. And on top of that, I don't have a detailed timeline to the level of my satisfaction for what is going to be happening next. And in fact, every day I wake up just wondering if Rufio is going to start barking wildly at the door because someone is in our backyard that we did not expect. So it brings me to this question. How do we deal with not ever being in control?
Be like water.
Yes. So, legit, okay. Tell us, can you lean into that a little bit more? Because yes, you're not surprised that I spent a lot of time asking myself, why can't I not be wet? I'm bad at this.
I mean, I think, this probably, to my reference of the overachiever's dilemma, or maybe like type A people, is like not unrelated, obviously, right? And I feel like I'm sort of a hybrid type A, type B, like depends on the moment, depends on how I'm feeling, probably depends on how much sleep I got or things like that, or how much I care about a specific thing. But I don't feel like I always need to be in control. I'm happy to like seed something either that someone else has more passion about, or, like, what are you going to do? Like we had a package stolen from our house, and my wife is like, we have a package stolen, and that was $90 from Target or whatever. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna like call the cops? Like, that sounds like a headache. Or like where do you go with that? And I'm just like, there's nothing to be done. Or like doing something about it would be more work, and maybe that's like a predisposition to like laziness or something like that. But I'm like, do I feel like I can do something about it? No? All right. or like, do I care deeply about it? No. All right. Like, let it go. Because maybe in some of that like constitutional stuff, like the idea of like taking on a thing and creating more work and all of that other stuff is like enough of a deterrent for me to be like, okay, I'd rather just have this bad thing happen and let it go than like wade into the waters, you know?
I love that you started with like something bad happening, because there's so much discussion around how those who seek control to an extensive degree tend to be highly anxious people that are like, that to some very, very existential degree never feel safe and like can't settle, because every wrong decision could lead to like untold, complicated, like terrible outcomes. And so instead, like, we turn into these little like facilitators of fastidiousness, of like lock everything together, build this like this beautiful, intricate house of cards that you feel like you can navigate, and then maybe someone won't kick one out, maybe the wind won't blow, but the reality is like it will, and it's sometimes facing that anxiety or dealing with that anxiety that could allow one to be more like water, to let that go.
And I guess that sounds like the harder thing to do. Like the harder thing is to like, all right, like let me figure out, let me unpack this and try to like achieve a state of calm. Whereas something, maybe it's the easy route. I'm trying to figure this out myself, but like, what would just make it go away? Like
Yeah.
what would just make the problem, or like if you can figure out what it is that's making you anxious, of like it's this like specific thing. It's like, okay, well, is there anything that you could do? You know, maybe it's just like it wouldn't have crossed your mind, but if you have the means, like, could you throw money at the problem? Could you throw like an hour of intensive like research at the problem? Like, is there something that if you just do that thing, it will have an outsized relief for you? And I think that is, and not as though I'm any expert at it, but like trying to think about like, all right, maybe I can just make it go away if I just do this one thing.
There's that problem within it too, of like, is the problem already present, or are you creating the problem?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like if someone steals a thing, or there's a hole in your roof, or whatever, like, right, that is sort of an external problem that has presented itself and obviously can create like anxiety and stress and whatever else. But, you know, in this instance, right, it like expectation matters, right? Like, having grown up in and on some construction sites and things like that, like, if you're expecting a construction project to go smoothly and as expected, right, like that is like a wrong ingoing assumption and a wrong expectation, just because you would be the first one to ever have a construction project go to plan. And so that idea of like, where do you set expectation, and then our orientation to try to accomplish expectation, then as soon as you deviate from expectation, that's where you feel the loss of control. Versus if you, right, like the be like water type of thing is just like, know what you want to accomplish, and like as the weird things come up, like here's a delay because of shipping, or here's a delay because of a permit or whatever, you just sort of like, okay, new stimuli, how are we adjusting? Not that like a construction project, I'm sure, is always going to be stress inducing, but the level of control you set as an expectation in the situation is going to impact how you feel, right? And like more higher fidelity expectations result in like higher fidelity loss of control, probably, I would think.
Yes. And actually, you just hit two things that I love. One is about expectation. It's not just setting these strong expectations and feeling the deviation, but it's also when control comes out and adding more expectations because you imagine what could go wrong, you're going to experience that deviation more often. Like one story that I always tell, or that I've been telling recently, is that I ordered an ironing board from Amazon and it like said that it was delivered, but it wasn't delivered. And I was like, oh my God, to get ahead of this, I can do all these other things. And my therapist was like, what if you just wait 2 days and see if the ironing board shows up before you do anything? I was like, all right, fine. Yes, I was talking to my therapist about an ironing board. This is where I am. And sure enough, I didn't have to like get in touch with Amazon and like talk to customer service. The ironing board eventually showed up. It was a miscommunication between their on-site delivery people and their system. And there's a lot of times where we create more problems by trying to solve problems ahead of time. And I think a lot of us who work in spaces that you're trying to anticipate anyone's needs, or anyone who's in a relationship with another human being, I'm not talking romantic, I'm talking anyone who's interfaced with another corporeal being, sometimes we bring those things to it. But the other piece that I thought was so interesting in what you said, Joey, is about purpose. So a lot of people like struggle with the idea of letting go of control and truly going with the flow because they feel as though they have to relinquish what direction they were going in. Because if they get pushed to the left and to the right, at the end of the day, we instantaneously translate that into winning and losing. Like I'm further away from my goal, or I now have to reset how I'm oriented toward my goal. And I think that it requires, in addition to be thinking, like just the idea of like putting everything in the lens of goal orientation, I think sets people up to fail. Whereas if we not only let go of control, but also the notion that purpose is a fixed thing as well, that cannot also shift and move around, it creates room for us to be able to be the human beings that we are, and to break that cycle of being human doings, which is an important job to do and life's work for many of us.
And there's always going to be trade-offs, right? Like the good, fast, cheap like example is like one where it's like, what is important to you in any project, right? Yeah. Like that's like a simple thing of like, you can have it good and fast, or fast and cheap, or good and fast but won't be cheap. Like that idea is like, where are you going to make a concession? And like going into any of these exercises, right? If you know what's important to you, you know you're going to be making, in any interaction with another corporeal being, like you said, there are going to be concessions in this process, right? And so like on the back end, when you're sitting in your construction project that is finished, like what is going to make you happiest about that it was like, you know, good and fast, or fast and cheap, or whatever. Like for you, I would expect that it's done right, just knowing you, like that there's not like some like weird edge that no one will ever see, but you know is there, and then will nag at you for the rest of eternity.
Yes. No, it's so true. So we'll see. Hopefully the leak that it caused yesterday in my living room will get dealt with. Was really fun.
It's not funny, but it
is, because it's just like,
it's not funny, haha. It's just like,
right.
Funny,
it's
of
like,
course.
It's funny, of course. You never expect that when you're working on a patio that you'll open your closet downstairs and it will smell mildewy, and that you'll wonder, why are certain things slightly damp? This doesn't make sense. Oh, thanks, atmospheric rivers and not having an overhang. Anyway, we're getting into it, but that's all.
I mean, well, I think we wrapped it up. We are never in control. Control is an illusion. And ride the wave.
Ride the wave.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
I do. We
shouldn't be any problems.
Relinquish the idea of fixed purpose. Don't let expectation get in the way of your existence. And maybe just get rid of this idea that everything is a problem to be solved or a place to arrive at. Sometimes it's just about being. And that's the best
snapping
part of it all. Yeah.
I'm snapping.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. Woo.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by those bowls that they use in a lot of yoga studios and meditation spaces. I think they're called singing bowls. Yeah, we're brought to you by that. That's right. Mm-hmm.
I saw when I called it a glass harmonica, which it definitely isn't. Although glass harmonica is just a series of singing bowls. There we go.
There you go.
I would like to thank our executive producer and glass harmonica, Jess Vander.
We'd also like to thank sound engineer and the song that's always in my heart, Alex Contel. Mm-hmm.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and man perpetually in control, Les Jacobs.
And the production crew that really balances competence and constitutionality in such a way that all humanity will always be in their awe. Zara Gilbert and Zara Gilbert and Nora Mestrich. I fucked it up. Oh no.
It's perfect.
I am incompetent. That's what it is. I can't get to it.
We had no expectations.
Yes.
As always, thanks, Len.
Thank you, Len.
Special thanks to Atmospheric Rivers, YouTube DIY videos.
Yes. Yeah, and whatever Joey's watching on YouTube, I think you should go in the show notes and just check out a couple links of whatever Joey's been watching this week, because it's got to be interesting.
There we go. No pressure.
I'll put mine in too.
It better be good science videos.
Yeah.
All right. Well, love you.
Love you too, guys. Okay. Bye.
Bye. A dream I never know anyone at the party.